Hello, welcome to another author talk. Tonight it's going to be a creator talk, a collaboration of three very gifted people that will be joining us. So we're going to be like the Brady Bunch tonight once they join, and we're going to have a fun time talking about the creation of this beautiful deck. So I see the Diviner Life join, so you can send a request. Here we go. Okay, that's not. Amethyst Sarah, you can't join. You just got this deck. Isn't it so beautiful? I see Thomas joining, so go ahead and send a request to join. All right, hold on a minute. Okay. So, and that one. This is a really beautiful deck. I'm excited for the talk tonight. And then we're just waiting for Eric. Oh, okay. Hi, guys. I see that Eric just jumped on. So Eric, go ahead and send a request, and then we'll add you to the group. And we're going to be like the Brady Bunch tonight.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. I've never had like a Foursquare
No,
live before.
I've never had a Foursquare live. So this is going to be fun. It's going to be good. And hopefully we can see the beauty of the cards. I'm sure. I have faith.
Yeah.
Everybody
will
just
shine
needs their
through.
own. Yeah, everybody just needs their own version of the deck. Hi, Eric. Go ahead and send a request to join, and then I'll approve you, hon. Let's see.
Thank you, Taffy Witch Treasures, for
I
getting
know.
the
What a
deck.
big fan already.
Yeah.
Already received. So cool. I love this. So I've had a chance to see the sneak peek when you and I got together in Portland, Thomas. But
Yeah.
it's very nice to meet you. Michael, should I call you Dr. Michael?
Michael is fine. Thank you. Thank you.
Very cool. It's nice to meet you. And
nice to meet you.
if you're in New York, feel free to come and see us at the Apothecary.
Yeah, next time I'm there, I will definitely stop in. I am in Florida.
Okay.
So just a heads up, by the way, I'm in the storm.
Please be safe. Oh my
I'm here
gosh.
the whole time, but
What part of Florida?
I'm in Tampa.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I have some friends, so I see the winds are heavy. Hi, Eric. Well, this is fun. Somebody screenshot how cute all of us are. And so I'm Danielle. I'm co-owner of Amityville Apothecary. For anybody that hasn't met me, it's nice to see all of you on the call tonight. So you want to do a little round robin, starting with Thomas, and then you guys can all introduce yourselves.
Sounds good. I'm Thomas Whitholt. I go by Hermit's Mirror here on Instagram. I'm a longtime diviner, and this was a great collaboration. I was sort of, I had this idea, and then I brought Eric on board, and then Eric and I were talking. We're like, we can make it better. Let's bring on an actual herbalist, not just someone who likes pretty flowers, right? Make it useful. And so then we brought on Michael, and it was just such a fun way of like mixing all of our talents and letting everyone do what they do. Really.
Yeah.
So, Eric, we can sort of go in this direction if you want. You would be next in that path for me.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, my connection is not great. I don't know if
You
you
look
guys
fine.
can. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, awesome. Well, hi. Nice to meet you. I'm Eric. This is my first time doing anything that has like centered around herbalism. I've been reading tarot just kind of for myself for a really long time, and then got into it in like an artistic sense, started incorporating it into my work as an artist maybe about 4 or 5 years ago. But this was the first time that I'd really done anything with herbalism, and also the first time that I'd done a big collaborative project like this. So that was really fun and exciting. It's been really great working with other creatives to make something like Thomas was saying, that's a nice sort of combination of all of our skills.
Cool. And how about you, Michael? How did you get involved in this project?
As Thomas said, he reached out and said, we're working on this thing and we'd like your input as an herbalist. And I actually paused for a minute and I don't thought like, are there other herbalists out there? Like, could you ask anybody? And I think I talked about that in the guidebook, but I was really honored to kind of be brought in for this herbalism perspective. And also, it was really cool to collaborate on like with other queer people was a really cool aspect of this project that I was really excited for. So yeah, I think I got brought in. I've been reading tarot for several years. I have a few other decks that I created, but this for me as well was also the first big like collaboration with multiple people. That was a lot of fun.
Wow. That's so cool. And had all three of you known each other prior to this outreach?
No, so I had known each of them
Oh,
separately,
okay.
Yeah, I was
following
gonna say, I
Eric's
think
art.
that this is actually how Michael and I met, I believe.
Yeah, because you were like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I don't follow him, I don't know him, and then like there was such a perfect synergy between you
I,
two.
Hmm.
I love that. That's so cool. So you're the mastermind bringing all this together. So for those of you on the live and watching it, the deck is gorgeous, called the Apothecary Spirits Oracle. And it's collaboration by all three of these wonderful humans, and it's gorgeous. So my daughter actually wants to become an herbalist, so I'll be picking your brain now that you're my friend, Michael.
I would love that anytime.
Absolutely. She's really enjoying, she's at the baby nascent stages of her journey, so lots to learn. And I was telling her about how wonderful this deck is as a tool, but also to provide insight. So the edges are just divine. I love that sage green. I don't know, maybe I'm calling it the wrong color green, but it's just like a minty, joyful chrysoprase green. It's so lovely. And then the back of the cards are just beautiful. And then the watercolors artwork design throughout is gorgeous. And you have it alphabetized. All the different herbs and cards are alphabetized, I noticed. So
Yeah,
you want to give an overview? Who wants to give like an overview for the inspiration and theme of this beautiful deck? And then we could dive in.
yeah. I mean, I can talk about the origins of the idea that I had, which is not this deck. This is a
Okay.
better deck.
Okay.
The deck was very silly. I was like, oh, I want to do this like sort of, like this Victorian language of flowers, flower fairy, gay flower fairy kind of deck, right? Like I just love flowers, I love
Yeah.
fairies, I love gay things. And so, it was fun, it was silly, it was sort of, I'll probably make that deck at some point, but it was a little bit
I hope you
superficial.
do.
It seemed a little bit superficial. And then I sometimes do this interview series, not this one, but an interview series on Instagram, and I was going to be talking with Eric about his then new paper oracle, which is a Lenormand oracle,
Okay.
which was the second deck after the Inkwitch Tarot.
Mm.
Eric has another deck that's launching in like a day and a half, so
Oh,
terrific.
congrats.
Lots of
Thanks.
great, exciting things going on. And I just loved his art, and I was like, poking around on his website to see what other art he was doing. And he had this great Ikebana series.
Okay.
And so I was like, oh, this would be gorgeous art like, to do these flowers, right? It was still sort of in the flower fairy zone. And then Eric and I were starting to talk, and I thought, like, okay, it's gonna be beautiful. It's still gonna it's gonna work as an oracle, but like it's missing that like the why. Like why should anyone actually care to use it over some other oracle deck? It's like, oh,
Mm.
these are plants. We should make the plants important in and of themselves and not just like an arbitrary Victorian flower thing. And so
Mm.
then I wanted it to be a teaching tool, and I was like, I'm a kitchen witch. I'm not an herbalist. But I know Michael, and I've known Michael for a couple of years, and so like I know he's legit, and I want his wisdom. And so that's each sort of piece came together to make it better, and then you guys can talk about the collaboration because it changed a lot again from that initial idea. We expanded lots of things, but I'll pass it over to whoever wants to go next.
I don't
Eric?
know. I feel like that covered a lot of it. I don't really know what else I'd have to add. It is I do think that like ultimately, even though I obviously really liked the initial idea to do something with the language of flowers, I think that this does have a little bit more of a practical aspect, just because I think more people are interested in herbalism and like what the things in their kitchen can do than they're interested in like Victorian flower arrangement, even though that is a cool topic. And like I would be down to make that deck still. But I do think that this has a little bit more of a like a widespread practical application.
Mm.
I will say from a herbalist perspective, I actually kind of have a little bit of an opposite view in that the whole time I was like, okay, how do I pick herbs that are beautiful? How do I pick herbs that are gonna like still match that original thought that Thomas and Eric had talked about? And luckily Eric was the artist, because I would be like, here's a mint, it's just a leaf. Good luck. And then he would, like, every time would turn out something incredible. And I was like, you made this so beautiful. I'm so glad that I just have to think about the practical part.
I love
That's sweet.
this.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, okay, so coming from the perspective of someone who's not involved in this creative process, Thomas gave me the sneak peek, and as we were kind of doing like a preview in Portland, I was shuffling through and looking at the cards, and certain ones just grabbed my attention right away based on the energy I was dealing with at the time. And it's so funny because the ones that grabbed my attention, then we shuffled it, and he goes, go ahead and pull a card. And we were live, and it was cinnamon. And that was exactly the energy that I was embodying. And I was feeling pretty spicy. And let me see if I can just find it, because it is, look at her. I mean, like, she is awesome. And then I looked at the descriptor, and I love how you tied cinnamon and then the properties from an herbalism perspective, but then as it relates to providing the insight of what's happening in your life. So it truly is an oracle to provide that kind of insight, but then also as the learning tool to support it. So somebody that's looking to learn about the energy of like ashwagandha, that's like really cool to learn about that very powerful root. But then also, what does it mean on the, as above, so below, as within, so without, right? We are all one, and it's all energy. So I thought that this was really good. Yeah, Canella's laughing at me saying spicy, but it was so appropriate for that today with the cinnamon. I'm like, of course it's cinnamon. But I mean, what do you have to say about that kind? Because there's human figures incorporated. It's not just plants. So talk a little bit about that aspect.
Yeah, so those, right, like the idea of the apothecary spirits. I mean, Michael introduced, as I said before, right, like there was this idea of these flower fairies, but then Michael, once I sort of moved away from that, Michael was like, well, there are these plant spirits, right, and your plant allies. Those are still a thing. And so what if we incorporated that? And I don't know, Michael, if you want to sort of talk more about that idea and how you see them playing out in the art that Eric made.
Yeah, I think plant allies is a term that I know from being in the herbalism community. And it was actually one of those moments where I had said it and I was kind of like, yeah, plant allies, that's a thing. And I remember Thomas and Eric being like, I've heard it, but like, do people say that? And there is a really like spiritual aspect, I think, of herbalism, which is something I enjoy, in that it's not just medicine, it's not just anatomy, physiology. It really does get into the living aspect, the living energy of a plant.
Yeah.
And while you study herbalism, there's a really common practice where people just kind of say, ask the plant what it can do for you, or like talk to the plant. And a lot of herbalists will say like, it speaks to me, or it tells me this. And they don't always mean it in a very spiritual way. Sometimes they just kind of use that language. So I thought it was cool to kind of bring that in and say, you're not just working with a plant off the shelf, you're like asking for help, or you're asking for guidance. And so I really like that visual representation that Eric brought in of the spirits, I guess, in that image.
Sure. I mean, like, look at chamomile and how comforting that is. So you've incorporated the beauty of the plant, but then it's like, have a cup of chamomile tea and just calm down and relax and take it easy. Like, that's so comforting. I
Yep.
think it's so beautiful. I'm like, So
One
I
of the things
get the
that we
opportunity to learn about things that I never even learned about. It's cool.
one of the things that Eric was really good about doing, and Eric, you can talk about your process with this, right? But was providing not just something beautiful, but something that was also, to Michael's point, like energetically resonant. So someone could read it intuitively. I mean, Oracle decks, one of their sort of common problems for some people is that you essentially need the guidebook because you can't just rely on like tarot knowledge, right? You either need the guidebook or you need your
Right.
intuition. They're not the same deck to deck to deck. And so we didn't want to put keywords on the cards. We
Hmm.
could talk about that because I have very strong feelings about that. And sort of, it's like, let's not do it. Let's let the art be the centerpiece. Even the names, right? We tried to sort of like hide the names while still making them visible enough.
Yeah.
Uh, but right, like Eric really sort of tapped into what Michael was explaining about the herbs and how they worked, and right, the different energies, both at the broad oracle level, but then also the um, physiological or adaptive genetic or whatever uh, form they took.
So that's cool because you guys included Michael as you guys had already started with the creative artistry. Like, did you guys collaborate on every card and then have Michael explain, here's what the root does, here's what the herb does, here's the energy of it, and then Eric would create the art based on that? Because like, okay, I'm looking at Ghost Pipe. I have no idea what it is, but there's somebody like crying there, and it definitely is evocative and emotive. And then like, look at Ginger. There's human form coming out of the roots, which is so cool. I mean, so how did you guys work with that kind of collaboration as you were making this? Because you can intuitively tell, like ginkgo and like the colors and the imagery.
For the most part, we did kind of have a bit of back and forth. Like we started with a lot of the just like the concepts that we wanted in the deck. That was a lot of like what Thomas was doing initially in the very beginning of the process. And then Michael and I had a lot of back and forth of like not only what each plant or tool does, but what parts of it are doing what. And to whatever extent I could, I tried to kind of incorporate that. Like ginger root is the part of the plant we're using, so I really wanted the emphasis on the roots in that card when I could. There are some exceptions just because like Michael was saying, some of the plants are not the most interesting to look at if you're just looking at the leaves or just looking at the roots. So there was a little bit of like, well, maybe we don't really use the flowers, but I'll just kind of sneak those in there a little bit and emphasize the roots, but here are some flowers too. But I think we did have quite a bit of back and forth of like just making sure that I kind of understood what the important parts of the plant were, what kind of needed to be emphasized, and like what the energy or the vibe was. I do think that the artwork that is the most successful, at least in my opinion, are oftentimes cards where by the time I started working on it, on the illustration, Michael already had a lot written about it because I feel like that really captured the personality of the plant was
Mm.
already really captured in writing, and so it was easier to translate into like human imagery when there was already so much personality in the writing itself.
Mm. I think it's beautiful. Well done, guys. Absolutely. Like, just gorgeous. And then there's incorporated tools, but obviously lemon is effervescent and it's gorgeous. So how is it working on Kickstarter? Because we were very pleased to be able to support your initiative through Kickstarter. This is all independently produced. It's not like working through a big publishing house. So, what is that experience like for our watchers who aren't familiar with it?
It's different every time. I think Michael, you had also kickstarted before, right? I know Eric, you had done several. I had done a couple. Um, yeah, Michael had done a couple. So we were all familiar with the process. They do change it like every 3 to 6 months. I swear there's something new. Like this, they had just launched a beta version of the survey, which made it horrible. That aspect of it, but You're like they're always trying to like improve it, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the process, right? Like you really need to make sure that you understand the feasibility of your product and also sort of what your bare minimum is, because Kickstarter is all or nothing funding. So, or it typically is. I
Right.
think they've just introduced a new feature that allows it to not be.
Mm.
But it means that, right, like if you miss by $1,000, like you get none of that money and no one gets their thing, right? Like no one pays, so there's no money transfer over. But then there's also no investment money to actually make the product.
Mm.
So for a lot of indie creators, they need that up front to be able to actually pay for the production costs and hopefully pay themselves a little bit for all of the hard work that they put into it.
Yeah.
You know, not recouping all of that work, certainly. That's what future deck sales are for. But getting something there. And so it was really important to me that everybody, since it's a three-person collaboration, that everyone sort of gets a share, and that, you know, we can feel good about like actually, you know, making something out of all of the work while also creating something that we're really excited to share. And yeah, I mean, Eric, I think you've done the most Kickstarters and you're about to do another one. So
I
I'm curious what the
I'm not
experience is like.
sure. I've only done two. I'm only about to
Oh,
do
really?
my third. My first couple of projects I just did like pre-order sales and like
Oh,
prayed
okay.
that enough people would order it that
Wow.
I wouldn't be paying money. I don't know what it was, but something really intimidated me about doing Kickstarter, and um, I now it has become such a like a significant, irreplaceable part of my process because it is the all or nothing aspect that Thomas was talking about. I think really it makes it very low stakes for not just people who are backing a project, but also for people who are putting the project together, because then if you don't get that funding required for production, it's like, okay, I don't have to spend like money I don't have to make this happen anyway, since people have pre-ordered it. So the Kickstarter is really, I feel like, the way to do a project like this. But yeah, I've only actually done two, not counting Apothecary Spirits, which
Right.
I guess would be the third one, but that was mostly Thomas doing a lot of the time and effort that goes into putting a Kickstarter together, because that on its own is like a huge undertaking, just organizing it all.
Yeah, the heavy lifting. I can only imagine. It's got to be a little nerve-wracking, I'd imagine. Right?
Well, yeah, I mean, especially if you're working with other people and right, like if I don't fund my own project, I only have myself to blame. If I don't fund their project, you know,
Right.
that's a little bit, right? There's more responsibility there. I have a lot of thoughts about the Kickstarter process, pros and cons, but Michael, I mean, you've done several as well.
Yeah, I had also done two prior, so Apothecary Spirits was also my third, like Eric. Um, and I will say, to emphasize, Thomas doing the heavy lifting. Um, once Kickstarter time came, I'm so thankful for Thomas stepping in and being like, "No worry, guys, I got the bulk of it." Like, you know, a question here or there, or just maybe some opinions or feedback, but um, it definitely made this project my favorite project so far because I didn't have to do the Kickstarter part.
That's great.
Yeah, that is not really fun for most creative people. Like it's very much the like business side of things. And in a collaboration, you can sort of farm that out to whoever feels most comfortable or least hates that
Right.
that aspect of things. And since I wasn't doing the art, I wasn't doing the guidebook entries. Like my contribution was the sort of first, I don't know, 60 pages of the guidebook or
Mm-hmm.
whatever, and then the sort of coordination, project management, coming up with the initial idea and some funding, and then I was like, you all have done so much work, the rest of this is sort of mine. So I did the Kickstarter, I did the shipping, fulfillment, all of that stuff.
Listen, every piece of this process is important and grueling, and you don't have a publishing house doing it for you.
Right.
So you get to maintain the creative control of all aspects, like the gorgeous colors, the gorgeous edging, like how you want it is how it appears, and you don't have the publisher saying, well, we got to cut costs, so let's trim here or do that. So what do you have
Oh
to
yeah,
say?
I
Yeah,
think
what
a
do you have to
publisher
say
would
about, like,
never.
I know some people will fulfill their first version through Kickstarter, and then maybe like a US Games or a different publisher will pick it up en masse. So for the folks watching this, like, they should get the first edition, because then when they're gone, they're gone. So
Well, no,
I mean,
I'm
it's
sure
very
we will
special.
reprint.
Mm. Yes, that's the goal,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
beautiful, but
exactly.
also all of this hard work and effort and collaboration. Um, that's a great question that just came through. So that justifies the cost of this deck is $55, right? Am I mistaken in that? It's
Nope,
55
that's the
retail.
retail. Yeah, it
Um,
was not that for Kickstarter, so that's one of the other bonuses of Kickstarter. You
right.
get the
So
deck usually a little bit cheaper.
right. So people don't understand necessarily the amount of time, effort, risk required that when you're self-producing. So, it's we have to support our independent artists and creators for all this amazing work. I love the pomegranate. Look at that.
Is
I can
that
like
your favorite
almost
one?
taste the pomegranate. Yeah. So the question is, do you guys have favorite cards in the deck?
That is such a tough question. I'm gonna just go with Echinacea. It's been my favorite, I think, since the beginning. It's the one that's also on the book cover,
Oh,
or on the box cover. I'm sorry.
it's gorgeous. I have it right here. So beautiful. That
Wow.
is very beautiful. I love echinacea.
I had such a specific request for Eric on that card. I was like, I know that this is how Echinacea looks, but if we could, and then when he turned out this art, I gasped. I I remember the moment getting that, and I made it like my phone background for a long time, and I just stared at it every day.
Yeah,
Aw.
Eric would text us, photos of drafts with these, finished versions, and Echinacea was part of like a batch of four or something, and I was like, oh, that's pretty, that's pretty. Oh my God,
It's
because
gorgeous.
I said it was like the third one or
Yeah.
something.
Eric, what was the inspiration of the person in there? I mean, it's beautiful.
Uh, well, Michael had talked when we were kind of like planning this card. We had talked about how most echinacea that you see or use is going to be purple, but that there is yellow echinacea, and I kind of wanted this emphasis on like the yellow really standing out. That would kind of reflect the card's meaning a little bit, and so having the person look like a real standout type of person with like the colored hair gradient and the piercings. I just kind of wanted them to look like the yellow echinacea, I guess.
I love that. That's cool. I like the piercings, little brow piercings. Very cool. All
Eric,
right,
did you have
Thomas.
a favorite? Oh,
No, it's okay.
I'm
Eric,
still
what's
I'm
your
still
favorite?
looking through the deck.
Oh, okay.
It's a more like somber card, but I think maybe Ghost Pipe is my favorite.
That's
I'm
beautiful.
not 100% sure about that, but it was one of the very first cards that we made. And it was also one of the most challenging cards. And I feel like oftentimes in other projects I've done, the most challenging cards end up being the ones that ultimately don't wind up looking like what I envisioned when I set out to work on them. But even though Ghost Pipe was really challenging to get a finished product for, I felt like, oh, yeah, there it is. That's what I was trying to do, finally. And so I think that just the satisfaction of like it turning out how it looked in my head, despite it being pretty challenging,
Right,
it just makes it one of my favorites for that. But also, I'd never heard of Ghost Pipe before
right.
we started working on this, and it's such a weird, interesting plant that I think that adds a lot to the card for me as well. Just that it was something new and something really unique and strange, but cool.
So I had never heard of it either. So I just looked up the meaning of it for the folks, and this is like a perfect example. So for the folks who have never heard of it and talking about how he captured it, the key words associated are mourning, cathartic, grief, and navigating loss. And then ghost pipe is a rare plant to stumble across in wild bloom. In fact, the plant only blooms for about 1 week a year and spends the rest of life hidden underground. Like, so like how interesting is that? And then you go on to talk about how I see ghost pipe as a nature's perfect metaphor for mourning. Like it's, I love how you tie together the unique characteristics of the herb and then how it relates to life and then the keywords. And like, I just think it's so evocative. Well done.
And I just want to say about that originally, sort of the original agreement that Michael and I had was that he would provide herbalist knowledge and I would write the guidebook entries.
Uh-huh.
And then as he was writing it, it was like, obviously I know from past oracle decks with Michael, it's like he's such a storyteller. So it was
Mm.
like to translate this into my version of a guidebook entry, which is kind of like a reference book, like it's not super exciting or personal, like really just loses a lot of that spirit and energy. And so I was like, I'll just like, add a comma here or like shorten a word here so it all fits on the page. But like this, yeah, I'm not editing this much. And I'm
Mm.
certainly not trying to rewrite it. So yeah, I mean, that's all Michael.
So how
Uh,
about you, Thomas? Which is your favorite? Did you come up with one?
I came up with three. I came up with a nice like primary colors kind of a
Oh, I
thing. Uh,
like it.
yeah, so California Poppy and Rose, Eric actually gifted me with the original art for because I'm obsessed with these illustrations. And then Wisteria was a fairly early one. Sorry if this is blurry, I have that, portrait mode on. Uh, it's just so sweet, so tender. I mean, it is tenderness, and it just comes through so clearly.
Yeah.
Uh, and it's so monochromatic, which is a little bit different from a lot of the other cards, that it just feels like all enveloping. And I think that that's a nice touch. One thing I will say that I was really pleased about with this deck is that it seems like such a totally different color palette from any of Eric's other currently available decks, that it's so fun to just see that totally different take even in that same artistic style.
That's cool. You know which one's my favorite?
Which one?
Mimosa.
Oh, nice.
And it's so fun because
Yeah.
looking at the art, I'm like, of course it's whimsical and playful and imaginative and creative. Like, I just think you did such a great job. And I used to have one of these plants on my property as a kid, and they were just so fun to play. Like, they're invasive. They're not from here. They don't belong in these states. But it brought me right back to when I would like play as a kid, and then I was like, oh, this is just wonderful.
My family
So
used to have one of those when I was a kid too, and so I feel like I had a similar attachment to that of just it feeling a little bit like a childhood thing,
it
which is
was
great for a
it
card
brought
about
me right
whimsy.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I love it. Well done. I love it. So cute. So somebody was saying, hold on, let me scroll up if I'm able to. I'm not the best with, let's see. Ah, this deck makes
Nope.
herbalism feel very accessible and inviting. I agree. That
You've
is a
given
beautiful.
yourself a Thursday filter.
Oh no, I don't know how to do that. What does it say? Thursday? How
Yeah.
do I do that? I
There
don't know how to
should be
undo
like a
that.
little smiley face with little stars in the
Okay, hold
bottom right.
there.
Yeah,
There it
there you
goes.
go. There you go.
Okay. Um, this deck feels like for myself and understanding a hug, if that makes sense. Oh, that's beautiful.
Aw.
I love that. That's nice feedback. Somebody, okay. So Mary is our publicist, and she said, were there times where you had different perspectives on a certain card?
Not that I can really remember. I feel like for myself, I was learning a lot about like I didn't have any real introduction to herbalism before this. Like I knew a little bit of like stuff my mom has told me about plants, but I was learning so much about the plants themselves as we were going along that I don't feel like there was any point where I had enough background knowledge to like feel like I disagreed with anything that we were discussing with the plants. Uh, and so I feel like I didn't really have a different perspective, but maybe only because I was learning so much as we went. I don't know. What about you guys?
I don't think so. I'm skimming through the deck just to see if anything stands out to me to say like, oh, I remember that conversation. But I think all around it really was like a peaceful collaboration, and just that we really trusted whoever seemed to have like the strongest feelings towards something. If someone really wanted something in this deck, we said, okay, great, how can we make that work?
Right.
And that goes for all three of us. I think there were times where each one of us, I think, put in an opinion about a card and said, this is what I want to do. And we said, okay, done, we'll do that.
I do
Right, like let's
know
make
that
that happen.
I do know that I had a few plants. Like I really wanted Lily of the Valley to be in the deck just because that's my favorite flower.
Aw.
I know that we had talked about wanting to put Hyacinth in the deck just because Hyacinth has sort of like a mythological background that's very queer, and so it felt like it would be good in here. But neither of those were really plants that had much of a healthy herbalist use. So I do feel like there was a little bit of me. I felt a little this way. I don't know if you did, but I felt a little bit of me being pushy, of being like, find a way to put Lily of the Valley in this deck.
I don't think
Just
I've
make it work.
ever seen Eric pushy. Maybe that's
That's
your
right
version
there,
of
the
pushy, though.
pushest he's ever been.
Yeah.
Give,
Right as
give a little
you said.
strong suggestion that it
Yeah.
really has to go. Look, here's a grape hyacinth. How beautiful.
Yeah, and then someone was just mentioning the green carnations, and we did find a spot for them in the gardening tools. That was important for Eric to include as, another queer flower reference. But yeah, carnations also, sort of have to be careful with those, I think. And that was one of the things that I think was really smart about what we did, and I do say so myself, is that like we each like divided and focused on one piece that we could feel comfortable with. So I came up with an initial set of like 60 or so oracle properties and said, these are the things that I would want in a deck that is sort of all purpose, is rooted in some sort of queer experience, but is not exclusive to that experience. Michael, good luck. Like, find us some herbs that will work. So, one of the things with herbalism, and Michael can speak more to this, is that a lot of plants and tools do a lot of things, right? And so a lot of it is the energetic of what's the intention, much like magic, right? Or much like a tool. What is the intention of using this thing?
Right.
I can use it in multiple ways with different effects. And so it was really coming from that learned, practical, professional herbalist background to say, this is actually useful. We can use it in this way. And then there were some other things where it was like, that's going to be a stretch. Like, let me see if I can find something else. Or, yes, Thomas, we could include that like fun looking flower, but like I don't use it. So it's not really authentic. I can't speak to the authentic experience of the user. So there were some of those conversations, but it wasn't, that was again part of the learning process of like, oh, this is pretty, or I know about this thing. It's like, yeah, but it's, that's honestly why lavender was late as a stretch goal, was because it's like lavender is like the second choice of any operation. It's never the first choice. And so it might be really familiar and comforting for folks, but as a professional herbalism tool, it's not usually sort of top 10. So that's why it works as like convenience and familiarity and all of these things, right? And it's a beautiful card, so I'm glad that we got it in.
Yeah,
But
I love
yeah, coming
lavender.
through
I
that.
actually, I've always been comforted by lavender, so I'm glad it's there. This is one of my favorite flowers and plants in the world. It's so interesting. I used to have passion flowers. Actually, in our garden, we do have passion flowers, and that has, it has both sexes in it. That plant, right, Michael? Isn't
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
from
yeah.
Central America, if I'm not mistaken?
It is, yeah. And I really wanted to include passion flower because in certain parts of Asia, it actually is representative of queer culture. It's kind of a green carnation of some Asian cultures, and so passion flower is one of those like top tier. I needed to get it in there.
See, I didn't know that. I learned something new today. That's cool. I was admiring the reishi mushrooms. So my daughter, like, this is a new journey for her with the herbalism, and like she's predominantly she's plant-based diet now. So like now that she's learning about all this, she shares with me. So I just love seeing all of it. And I was like, oh, this is a way for me to be involved with her learning as well. It's wonderful. This is cool. Look at Elder.
Yeah,
That's
and
awesome. Elderberry.
with that, right, like as you're mentioning the plant-based diet, you were talking about cinnamon, right? Like wanting to incorporate things that are accessible,
Hmm.
which Eric was talking about, as well as things that are useful, but may require special care, like Lily of the Valley being used as a flower essence. And so that's why it was so important to have someone like Michael who could really help us navigate. So it wasn't just like looking up this thing that then if you actually use it, you might poison yourself, right?
Right. There's
We don't
solid
want that.
credibility there. Exactly.
Yeah,
It's really important. But
exactly.
that's what's going to make you stand out from others. You're not just like dialing it in. You have like expertise and real thought behind it. And I think it's very well done. How many cards are in here? 62, is that correct?
64.
64.
Yeah, we had 3 bonus cards as part of the
Mm.
stretch goals, and then the 3 of us chipped in to create Marigold, sort of as like a respect and honor card for our love of our Kickstarter backers.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. Oh, there's the lily of the valley. That's so beautiful. Look at that. Gorgeous. So delicate. And the marigold. Oh, look at gorgeous. Look at that. It's so
Yeah,
opulent. The colors are so rich. That's gorgeous. I like how you include the tools too, like the scissors. Let's cut that out. So it is spread, boundaries.
yeah.
I think we all need a little bit of boundaries, right?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, that was one of the things early on that we were trying to figure out. Like, okay, how do we organize this? Do we do like all, you know, 20 plants, 20 fungi? There are 20 useful fungi in the apothecary world. I'm sure there are, but they may not be as accessible. Do we do tools? Do we do things that aren't necessarily like plants per se, or you might use the juice or the flower essence or stuff? And Michael, I don't know if you want to speak to sort of why you chose the tools that you did, or what else you would have liked to include, like if we have a second edition that expands it.
Uh, I remember when the tools were first brought up, and thinking, I'm not going to have enough like tools to fit this need that Thomas has introduced to us. I'm not going to be able to pick something. Um, and I apologize, the storm is getting a little bad, so I think my service is getting
You
rough.
just
Um,
stay safe.
okay. But as we got further in, I was like, ooh, actually, you know what, Thomas, I have like 10 other extra tools I want to talk about. So I ended up maybe pushing a little harder than I should, but I really dialed it back and thought, okay, it's day 1. I'm in my herbalist training course. What are the things in the kitchen that I clearly see and I know that every herbalist is going to need? Um, and that's really when it got easy, and I just started kind of picked the things where I said, what are day 1 basics? If I pulled a book off my shelf and it said, you need these 3 things, what are those things? Um, Actually, I think the tools is where we had our first, not clash, but as we were asking, talking about before, like things we disagreed on, where I was like, I want a harvest basket. I'm in the garden, I'm picking herbs, I'm throwing them in a basket. That's like such a real experience for me. And so we included it in garden tools, kind of to mix it as one card. Um, so harvest basket is still highly on my list of, I might separate it.
The expansion pack. And actually, I do remember. So with pokeweed, right, like the concept of it was toxic, and so the first version that Eric created involved Britney Spears, or a drag queen
Oh
dressed up
yeah.
like Britney Spears,
Oh,
which I loved, and I was
yeah.
like, oh, we should do this like whole like line of postcards or extra bonus cards that are sort of like campy. But we didn't go anywhere with that. But it's a great. I don't know if you still
That would
have
be
it, but
fun.
it would be fun to add
There's
in. Instead, we
pokeweed.
went with the gay baiting thirst trap
There
Mm.
for pokeweed.
can't go wrong.
What's more
Perfect.
toxic than that?
Exactly.
Nice. It's hello, sir.
Yeah.
So, does anybody that's watching, are there any additional questions? You guys have been a great audience thus far. Oh, there's more tools, the funnels.
Yeah.
Pokeweed is not shy, Mary says. Certainly not. It's like, hello. So,
Yeah, I was just that was making me think. You know, some of the ideas that we included, like I mean, some of the plants, Cersei, but like I wanted Ghost Pipe, we talked about, like, I didn't want it to all be like fluffy and
Right.
nice feeling, even though it does feel like a hug. And so Cayenne, really thinking about like that idea of like Stonewall started as a riot, as, like Pride was a riot before it was a parade.
Yeah.
And so like, oh, how do we bring in sort of the sacred rage aspect of this experience, which translates to other people's experience as well. And then like the hunger and sort of envy and bitterness of experience of wanting something that you can't have.
Mm.
And Cersei, it's sort of a challenging fruit and a challenging card. But it's like such an incredible illustration that
Yeah.
they're created for it that even though it's, it may not be anyone's favorite, it's just such a well created
That's a
image.
strong card. Cayenne right there. And then you're right. That is bold illustration right there. I mean, like, you can feel it. So it's not all fluffy. I think you did a great job of like capturing different energies of the different herbs, like different ages, different depictions. It's definitely evocative. There's more gentle, of course, like you have the beauty of the rose. This is a darling river rose, but then there's fists there. What was your inspiration there, Eric, with this one?
Sort of. I can't remember exactly what our keywords for that card were,
Integrity
but
is one.
The darling river rose. Let me look it up.
I remember thinking of like, I mean, almost sort of similar to Cayenne, of like people rioting, or maybe not rioting, but like protesting, of like people putting their fist in the air and being like bold in that way.
Integrity, identity, and self-knowing.
Mm.
It's interesting because it's very divine feminine too, because you could be strong yet gentle. It doesn't have to be so in your face. I think you capture that in a lot of this.
Yeah.
I think strength does not have to be overt and like pounding you over the head.
We already have
So,
ashwagandha for that.
yeah, exactly.
The
Well,
daddy
there's
herb.
a time and a place. Listen, absolutely. What about spreads? Like, how do people use this? As they get it, they're so excited. Obviously, you can pull a card a day, but how else can they utilize this?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that I wanted to actually really include that I personally, that's what I was joking, like publishers would not have allowed me to write 10,000 words on how to use Oracle decks inside of an Oracle deck. Like that's a book that you would then publish separately.
Right.
And so I really, as the coordinator and the person running it, I was like, I'm going to include all of these things that I want to talk about and how to actually use Oracle decks usefully because Michael has lost power,
I
I think.
think so.
Right,
We'll follow
like
up
there are
to
a
make
lot of,
sure he's okay.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Um,
He's
it's a
back.
recap of when I was excellent. I was just thinking of when you had Ciolo and Neon, and she was like in the middle of a monsoon in the
Oh my
desert.
God, she's running around the desert.
Yeah. Sorry, just having flashbacks to that. There was always storm with you all, Amityville Apothecary. But where was I going with that?
Using it as a
Oh,
useful
right.
tool.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. Having it actually be like tips on what to look for and how to expand your Oracle practice, because I think that's really missing because Oracle decks are not, you use this deck like this, you can use these same techniques with this other deck because the decks are structured differently. So I wanted to provide like a divination guide that had examples from the deck where you could be really predictive, you could be really reflective, you could do a 3-card spread, and then we included I created 3 spreads that are sort of thematic to nature, cycles, all of that stuff, harvest. And then each of the tools gets its own 5-card spread, which is the 5-card cross is one of my favorite sort of basic spreads. People think 5 cards is a lot. It's not when you know how to use them. And then they sort of have a pattern that then gets mapped onto themes within each of those tools. So you essentially have like 33 spreads in that deck to work with.
And it's all
and
in this
in
little,
addition to tips.
yeah.
Yep.
I really liked that you had made spreads that are not just in the like front of the guidebook. I thought it was fun that like there are certain cards where the entry has a spread that goes with it of like I think the funnels
The
is one of
funnels.
them where it's like here's
Yeah.
something you can do kind of with the energy of this specific card. I think that's a really good idea that I sort of want to see in more stuff because I think significators are kind of fun. I know not everybody likes them, but I think they're kind of fun in cartomancy in general, and so it sort of plays to that appeal, I think.
Yeah,
When
so all of the tools have a spread like
when Thomas had presented that idea of using the tool kind of as a significator in these spreads, it changed the way that I look at Oracle decks. I was when he was asking me like in writing the guidebook and really going over like what these tools meant and how they were going to be used at that point, it also changed the way that I thought about them. So I highly recommend using those spreads. A lot of thought went into them. I'm still like so amazed by them.
It's cool. So guys, in the book, as you go to funnels, it'll talk about what that represents, but then following up the page after funnels, there is a 5-card spread and it says putting funnels to work. And then he goes and explains how to do the layout and what each card represents. And then gardening tools, you did the same. So you have your gardening tools and what that means, but then again, putting the gardening tools to work. So there's
Yeah.
different spreads.
And
so
that was the reason to include tools as well as ingredients, we could call them.
yeah.
Because, right, like it's sort of like verbs. That was the concept that we had, or that I sort of explained originally, is that the tools can act like verbs, whereas, the 54 flowers and things are more like nouns. And so actually activating the thing in different ways through the lens of the tool. And so that's why, to help someone do that, we agreed that I would create some spreads for that.
Yeah, I love that. You went on to do that for the measuring spoons, the mortar and pestle. I'd imagine the shears too. So,
Yep.
maybe as we embark on fall and approach like, you know, the time to let things die, this is a
Yeah,
good spread to be doing for the seasonality.
for sure.
Let things go so that we can lighten our load for the rebirth, which comes in the spring. So, yeah, I love that. Does anybody else that's watching have any additional questions? Because I know we have like maybe
Yeah,
just about 5.
there's one from the Brave End.
Okay.
So Eric, I don't know if you can read that, but yours is the most relevant. Your answer is the most relevant.
Um, yeah, I have a Kickstarter starting on the 1st, actually, for on October 1st, for a D&D, like a Dungeons and Dragons themed Oracle deck. And I think I've been kind of inspired by Thomas you have a way of like making your work multi-purpose, like the Lenoracle that's also a deck of playing cards, or this Oracle deck that will also teach you herbalism. So I'm trying to, with the Dungeons and Dragons deck, it's an Oracle deck, but also something that I'm hoping people could incorporate into their like personal game if they want to, doing the multi-purpose thing. But yeah, I have that coming out on October 1st. I don't know exactly what time, but it'll be early in the morning, maybe like 8 or 9.
Cool. Is there EB? What does that mean? What is that? I'm not.
I don't know what EB is.
Yeah.
Not sure.
Sure. What additional projects are you both working on, Thomas or Michael?
Early bird, I think is what Lisa said.
Oh,
Oh,
early.
there is an early bird if you're just getting the deck without extra things, but it's small, so it won't be a huge deal if you're a little bit late.
Forgive my naivete. I'm still learning.
No, I have no
Oh yeah,
idea.
no, it took me a second, and then Lisa said something about, or like, do I have to get up early or stress about it? And I was like, oh, early bird, yes, 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 the common Kickstarter trick to get people to like fund the project in 5 minutes.
I love how
Which,
supportive everyone is for chiming in. It's appreciated.
yeah, Yeah.
Before we end this, I encourage everybody to follow all three of you all and like support your initiatives. I love that you guys are creative and putting this into the universe. So we have these decks in stock. You can buy them at Amityville Apothecary. We have a website if you don't live nearby. It's shop Amityville Apothecary. .com, and it's live on the site, so you can buy these. We also will be saving this on our Instagram and on our YouTube, so you can share it with your friends as well. Michael, before you lose your power and the storm gets worse, what are you working on next?
Right now, I think the biggest project I'm working on is Small Spirits Tarot. So I have the Small Spirits Oracle, which is a insect-themed oracle deck. And so I'm now working on a Small Spirits Tarot to kind of join that. So I'm really excited for that. And then I have a few other like small things that I'm doing, but we'll keep those as side projects for now, one thing at a time.
We'll
What
follow.
do you mean one thing at a time?
I know.
Understand.
How about you, Thomas? You got a lot of things that you're always juggling.
I do, yeah. So we just started the first week of my semester of divination. So today we had the first class on creating an oracle, which was a ton of fun. Folks can join. You can get the recording of the first session and then look forward. But it's a semester long or academic school year long. If you do both semesters of live classes in different forms of divination topics, things that are multi-purpose, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like reading big pictures of cards, right? Big spreads, regardless of the type. There are a lot of strategies that help that you can learn from Kipper or Lenormand or from Oracle or Tarot or all of that stuff. And then there are different workshops to like dip your toes into other things. Like October's workshop is an introduction to Lenormand. November is on runes and bibliomancy. And then December is on the Tarot Tableau, which you saw me talk about at
Right.
Northwest
I saw
Tarot
that in
Conference.
Portland. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but
Well,
that'll be a 3-hour version instead of a 1-hour, just like drive-by.
it's really fascinating. So I could just learn and be a sponge. And I really enjoyed this talk with all of you. So
Yeah,
nice to
thanks for
meet
having
both of you,
us.
Thomas. I always enjoy catching up with you. So definitely stay in touch. You guys have an open invitation to come see us in New York. And we could
Cool.
set up a fun workshop if any of you want to come and teach. We would love to do that. So,
Eric
definitely stay in.
also hosts art events back in where you are, Eric, right?
Uh, Sorry, I didn't catch all of that.
Oh, I was saying like you also like, I don't know if it's teaching or hosting art events or something like.
Oh, yeah. I teach
Yeah.
painting classes in Oklahoma City sometimes. I do work with one of those. If you've ever been to like one of those things where like people drink wine and learn how to paint,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
I do that on Saturdays.
That's
So if
super
you want to
fun.
host one of
Yeah.
those, Eric can be your teacher.
Okay. Well, Eric, come and then we'll have like a wine and sip paint party and you can teach us how
Yeah,
to create Oracle
that'd
and
be
Tarot.
fun.
Sign the decks, all sorts of fun.
That sounds great. We can say like tarot or Oracle inspired painting night. All right.
That'd be cool.
Very cool. Thank you guys so much. Michael,
Thank
stay
you.
safe.
Thank you.
Norm, and we'll all be in touch soon. Take care.
Take
Bye,
care.
guys.
Bye.